You are about to enter. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Open your mind. Open your mind. Open your heart. It is time to reveal. Time to unlock. Time to listen and hear the truth. The secret mysteries, hidden agendas, dark cabals, all come to light. Behold, hot conflict. My name is Salim Siddiqui, and this is the strangest story you have ever heard.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Boys and girls, we're live. We're on the air. My name is Salim Siddiqui, and you're listening to Hot Conflict. I know you've been out there. You've been waiting. You've been wanting. You've been holding your breath. You've been waiting for that moment, and now it has finally come. The moment you can get your questions and comments live on the air. Ask about the weird and the wild, the strange and the supernatural, things that go bump in the night. That time you woke up sweaty all over in the bed in the dark part of the night, and you saw something in your dream, and you wanted to know what it means, and you were scared to ask anybody or even admit to yourself what you possibly saw. You're listening to Hot Conflict, and we cover the weird, the wild, the supernatural. We cover politics, pop culture, paranormal. We cover the things that people normally don't talk about. You hear the strangest and the weirdest stories here. Well, I'm happy to get this show on the road and off the ground. We've launched a new website at www.hotconflict.com. And for those of you who've been waiting, there's a lot of new content up there on the site for anybody to peruse, audio content, video content, tons of old blogs, the archives of old shows, talking about stuff from pop culture like Stargate and Star Trek, shows like Supernatural, pop culture classics like Battlestar Galactica. Also a lot of other spiritual stuff related to angels, jinns, the end of the world, the end times prophecy, and as well as the original classic Stories of the Prophets or Story of Truth, the original series that started it all. Many of you people have been listening on, watching on YouTube previously, a lot of our guests. We're glad to have you on. You can call into the show live and get your questions on the air at 760-825-0949. We're always welcome here every Thursday night from now on, inshallah, God willing. We're going to be live every Thursday night at midnight. We're going to try and keep the show 1 or 2 hours, depending on your questions and comments. You can call me at 760-825-0949. Well, it's been an interesting and bumpy ride for those of you who have been paying attention. We've been having some strange things happening on the ground, on the surface world. Now, since we last talked, many things have been happening. We've got new elections that went about, and the president, Barack Hussein Obama, just won his victory as the Democratic nominee for the president of the United States of America. Now, for those of you who have been listening to the show, you know that we talked about the concepts related to this president and what's happening in our present time. Now, many people, as you saw for the last year, were getting very confused and worried about what was happening. We had all kinds of groups talking about conspiracies, dark cabals in the government, that Barack Obama might be a plant or a secret Muslim implant to take over the government. We heard a lot of strange stories. Now, those of you who have been followers of the hotconflict.com website or podcast or radio show know that we talked in many of the series about the fact that Barack Obama being president was a sign, and I myself went way out on the limb probably a year or so ago before the election ended here, saying he would definitely win a second term and it wouldn't be a problem. But for those of you watching who expected to see the president whooping his opponent, Mitt Romney, from the Republican side, we saw something, because many people who listened to the president and heard the famous speeches of the president recognized in him the ability to express what we call the blue ray, or the lion nature of expression and communication. And it's one of the signs that we referenced earlier when talking about the first run at this president's election when he won the first time, and talking about how he used his communication skills, his oratory skills, to tap into that vibrational change moment, to tap into the resonance and frequency that people were looking for. We talked about that fact being one of his signs or his characteristics of this time, that the West was now ready for an African American who stepped up to the mic and rocked it right. And they understood and accepted or believed in their heart that his intention or his vibration or his frequency matched theirs. And they did the ultimate physical act, which is going out there and voluntarily voting. Now, there was a question whether in this second run around, he was going to have the same kind of enthusiasm and turnout as he did before. Was the first time merely a strange phenomena that caused this? And now we see after this second election that even though he had that moment of lapsing his expression and communication skills in the first debate, there was never really an issue, although many people got slightly worried. Even me, myself, watching the news and watching the debates and seeing the tide turn, I started to think, Mr. President, if you don't go out there and start swinging, But that's the nature of the president, to have a very cool, calm demeanor. And many of the people of the light have always referred to him in this way, as being someone who is playing an instrument or playing a chess game on a board that you don't even see yet and don't understand. And that's one of the things we like to talk about here on the HotConflict.com radio show, talking about what the political moves actually are happening and what they really mean and how they relate to us. So with the president winning this election, what we had is the final dichotomy of the groups, right? We had the right-wingers being represented by Mitt Romney, the business elite representing the upper echelons of the richest of the rich of society, right? Those who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, or in Mitt Romney's case, a silver foot in his mouth. But we saw Mitt Romney, strangely, the one weird aspect about Mitt Romney, other than he was the right wing, other than he was totally red Republican, other than he being from a wealthy family with political connections and the elite Harvard business and law school and the high society, was that he had one strange characteristic. Well, many strange personal characteristics, but as a political candidate, he was a Mormon. The one fringe group of the whites, of the white Christian demographic that still was the Republican target, what they call the angry right voter. Mitt Romney had the one strange characteristic of not being part of the Southern Bible Belt, of being a Mormon. So we have a weird dichotomy, a white pillar and a black pillar. An African-American president from direct Muslim parentage on the father's side, directly from Africa, representing the liberal left, and a white rich elite with a history of being from the European elites and the Western elites, but being a Mormon, a fringe African candidate with a strange Muslim twinge, versus a strange white Anglo-Saxon candidate with a Mormon twinge, something that the Southern Baptist and the right-wing evangelical side didn't seem to have a problem with in this election. Now, for those of you who understand signs and symbols, we have that very clear patterning of two pillars, the white pillar and the black pillar, or as many in the Brotherhood would call it, Boaz and Jachin, right? This concept of taking two pillars or two squares and pitting them against each other, the classic dark challenge, right? A white square, a black ball, the square, the circle, the concepts of having these symbolically for another election. We have the president being the 44th president, 4-4, again, another numerical symbol, as we have finally reached to the number of presidents of this land in the West, this country called America, to the 44. Now, that in and of itself should have been enough of an indication for most people to know he was going to get a 4-term and a 4-term, right? And that we were looking at 8s and 4 being 4 or 4 squared, or a square upon a square, or 2 squares creating the cube, a square looping in around itself. Now, strangely, we talk about Obama representing the square or the square dealing or trueness or soundness, or that your leader is square, meaning he represents true honesty. He represents solid lines. He's square in his actions and his dealings. The terminology and the words that we use have meanings that ripple out through the media, through the storytelling, through the communication, and they symbolically refer to many different things. And depending on your level of understanding, depending on your comprehension, you hear more or less in what's being expressed, whether you're listening to clues while watching the major news networks or reading about history in the past, or even listening to this show. Depending on your level of understanding and how much work you have done to truly find and seek and understand not just the agendas, not just the darkness, but the true meaning of things, the greater your understanding, the more clarity you will see, the more insight you will have, the more you will envision and comprehend the signs and the symbols of everything around you. Now, we talk a lot about the concept of signs and symbols in the stories, and signs and symbols in politics and pop culture. And for those of you who want to have specific questions, go ahead and call us on the show live at 760-825-0949. We're more than happy to take your questions. You can call that number by phone or call in with Skype at Blog Talk Radio and log in there and call in with Skype, and it should be a free call. We talk about a lot of the different strange concepts of why we're starting. We decided to go ahead and relaunch the website and reset up this free call-in radio show for you guys at least once a week to help you get your questions and comments in and break that communication barrier, because we're at a time where we do have to start changing things, where we do have to start acting ourselves, speaking out ourselves. Now that the election is over and the drama that has been played out for the last year while nobody covered any real news, even though everybody knew from the beginning of the election all the way through to the end that there was really no chance for Mitt Romney to win, but the media covered it day and night and day so that no one else could think of any other issue. Now that that's over, it becomes incumbent upon us who have been expressing this, especially those of us who have been saying that changes are coming and imminent, that we are going to individually have to figure out what our individual roles are. Where do we fit in? How do we put ourselves into play? If you are a pawn or a piece on the board that the Lord Most High has created, you wake up in the morning and you're still alive, for some reason the Lord Most High sent your soul back, then there is work to be done. There is a message to be given. There is an action you're supposed to take. If not for that, then there would be no need for you to wake up, right? Since you are alive, since we are alive, since we are here, then there must be a reason and there must be something that we're supposed to do. And each of us in our own way has to try and figure out what is the role we're playing. And we all play multiple roles, right? This is a multi-playing RPG right here where we all have different roles to play. We're fathers, we're sons, we're brothers and sisters. We're all kinds of different people, right? We know that we all have different roles to play. We all have characters. We all have different dialogue to say to different people. The way you talk to a grown-up and the way you talk to a child is not the same. The way you talk to your boss and the way you talk to your best friend is not the same. The way you talk to a stranger and the way you talk to a loved one or a close person to yourself is not the same. But the journey itself is about figuring out that little tweak, figuring out who's saying what, who's expressing the truth, who's searching for something, who's really in what we call the path or the field or the resonance or the vibe, who's a seeker, who's a journey person, who's a journeyman, who's a fellow in this same game or craft that you were upon. And we try to find those who had sought knowledge or learned by experience or figured out parts of this journey. Those who have mastered a skill, as we would say. They have learned a technique. And everybody has to develop that on their own. And each person has to figure out what it is they're looking for.
You are listening to Hot Conflict Radio. Colin live every Thursday night, midnight, 12 a.m. Eastern. Call in to get your questions and comments live on the air. Dial into the show by phone 760-825-0949. You can dial in from the site on Blog Talk Radio using Skype or through a regular phone calling in at 760-825-0949. That's 760-825-0949. Get your questions and comments live on the air, talking about the weird and the wild, the strange and the supernatural, things that go bump in the night. Get on Hot Conflict.